Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, Buckeyes heading to Happy Valley this weekend, a place where they generally will win and it's never particularly fun or, a game that people feel particularly great about afterwards. And I think we're really about to set the tone for that specific mood on today's bold prediction show. Because, Tony, this is one where I usually go through and I've got a decent baseline of, here's what they typically do. What are we assuming, Tony? What are we assuming in terms of how things are going to go this weekend? Because it feels like a lot of the prior data is probably not all that relevant.
Tom, what I did is I feel like it's time for players to go win games. So I mainly just focused on the players this time. Like I'm not going to get into the minutia that you are of, 2.3 yards per carry against Penn State is much more bold than 2.4 yards per carry against Oregon. Don't you understand numbers? Blah, blah, FEI, blah, blah. Yes. Now, if I would do that in Australian accent, I would have it down perfectly. But I'm going mostly individuals because players need to step up and win this game for the Buckeyes. Tom, you, of course, have tried to walk the tightrope and push the boundaries on what is not bold and what is not bold. And I'm sure the listeners are just can't wait. They're like, please stop the banter and begin the show. So, Tom, I know people also want to know who won last week. I did because, one, I predicted a Jordan Hancock interception. I got that. I predicted that a Buckeye would have a 17-yard play in the second or third quarter, or a 34-yard play in the first or fourth quarter. Carnell Tate, number 17, a 17-yard play in the second quarter. No 34-yard plays in the game. I also had a receiver other than Emeka Egbuka or Jeremiah Smith would score. That, of course, was Carnell Tate, America's MVP. And then, of course, you did not get any correct, I don't believe. So no need to spend any more time on that. So,
it sounds like I was overly generous with what I allowed you to have last week, and sounds like it's time to learn that lesson. Okay, you want to go first? Let me tell you, I hate it.
Okay. Well, here you go. Here's my first one. It is a one-pointer. And hey, prepare yourself, Tom. There will be at least four plays made in this game that is equal to the distance of the number of the jersey of the player making the play. Last week, you had Carnell Tate with a 17-yard reception. You had Quinshon Judkins with a 1-yard rush. That was it. I'm saying at least four of those, it has to be four different players making those, whether it's a rush, a reception, interception return, sack for yardage lost, Caleb Downs on a 2-yard tackle for loss. Maybe that's never happened. Stuff like Denzel Burke, a 10-yard interception return, takes a knee after 10 yards and is like, no, I've had enough, something like that. Four of those plays.
So it has to be exactly the yardage
yes.
of the person's jersey number.
Mm-hmm.
So realistically, we're looking at Quinshon Judkins 1 yard, Emeka Egbuka 2 yards, Brandon Innes 11 yards, Carnell Tate 17 yards. Jeremiah Smith 4 yards.
That's impossible.
What if they give him the ball on the 4-yard line, Tony? What then?
Very good point. I stand corrected.
Yeah, you got Will Howard's in there with 18.
Yeah, Demarion Witten with 81.
Hey, yeah, that's not the one I'm real worried about at the moment. We talked to Bennett Christian. Could he go 85 yards through the heart of central Pennsylvania? Entirely possible.
They hit 60 on the way.
Yeah. Now I'm trying to remember G. Scott's number, which is just absolutely flown out of my head for some reason.
88.
8, okay. Probably not. If he does, he will go back in time, which will also take you to central Pennsylvania. I'm okay with this if we limit it to plays on offense. How about that? Can we do that? Limit it to just plays on offense? Because the defensive thing, like a 2-yard tackle for loss for Caleb Downs, feels like he's going to have tackles for loss, and you're very likely to steal one there. So,
but it's not just
I'm happy with bumping it. I'm happy with bumping it up one, or limiting it just to offense. We'll take special teams and defense off the
no more than
table.
no more than one defense or special teams.
This is why you occasionally win these by accident. It's because I'm being too benevolent, which is always my problem on these shows. And frankly, we're 5.5 minutes in, so I need to just say yes and move on. This is the problem. You come up with these stupid ones where it's like, well, what's my basis to determine this? And it's, I don't know.
And I still back off a little bit because it's like, I need to get the show moving along when I know for a fact, this is probably, who knows, probably never been done before. Tom, your turn.
Probably hasn't been done in literally, I don't know, 2 games or something. All right. So my first one, Tony, Quinshon Judkins, 2.9 yards per carry versus Nebraska, 2.1 yards per carry versus Oregon. He has not cracked 30 yards of rushing in either of those games. Tony, he not only goes over 4 yards per carry this weekend, but also 50 yards of rushing this weekend. Tony, and I will remind you, Ohio State's offensive line gestures vaguely.
So this is going to be a long, arduous show because your bold prediction, and I understand the opponent and all of that. Your bold prediction is that Quinshon Judkins is going to rush for at least 50 yards and average at least 4 yards per carry. This is the mud that you're slinging right now. Is that correct?
Yes, Tony. This is what I'm saying, and again, providing some context here that this would be a significant positive outlier for him over the last few games against good competition. Those are really the 2 good defenses we've seen him play against, and so yeah, I think that's I mean, I'm willing to listen to counteroffers here.
Well, the counteroffers, he's done this. Let me see. He did this.
Please tell me more about Akron. Tell me all about Akron, Tony.
No, I'm not just going back to Akron. I'm going all the way back to Ole Miss. So he did this 12 times as a true freshman.
Yes,
and then,
yes, Tony.
And then
was he running behind the 2024 Ohio State offensive line?
No,
Penn State?
He wasn't, but he was running against the SEC. And so and he did this about 8 times last year. He's done this in the first 5 Ohio State games that he played in, and he's done it 5 times as a Buckeye and hasn't done it twice as a Buckeye. So there's no way that this can be bold, Tom. I'm not doing this for me. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for the listeners and a little bit for you because I'm trying to hold the show up. And by allowing this,
here's what I'm going to say.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to rewind to the conversation that you and I had immediately before we hit record.
No,
about how the Ohio State running game has gone absolutely off of a cliff since Josh Simmons was injured, and how you can't possibly look at those prior games, which is when it happened, and compare it to now, because obviously everything has gone off of a cliff the last couple of weeks.
Here's what we can do. Since he's averaged 2.1 yards per carry and 2.9 in the last 2 games, let's just combine that and say 5 yards per carry and 55 yards. Go 5. You know what? I'll take the 55 off the board. Just 50 and 5. That's insane because not that you know what's going to happen, but we've got to respect the game of football here and what numbers actually mean, not just the opponent. So,
okay. So as long as we take how Ohio State's offense has looked since, in its current state, and also the opponent off the table, sure, we'll keep things moving with 5 yards per carry and 50 yards total.
I mean, that is not asking too much for a bold prediction. In fact, you're asking him to reach, what is he averaging on the season, Tom? He's averaging 6.4 yards per carry and about 70 yards rushing. So that's what we're talking about. And I understand all of the opponent stuff, but if we're talking bold, how low can we go below his average for something to no longer be bold?
I understand they're not playing Akron this week, and I also understand that they're missing a couple of offensive linemen. And listen, if we want to take context into account, then sure, these numbers are extremely reasonable. But we're not going to do that. So, okay, Tony, go on with your next one.
We should take a break. Newest sponsored by the Calm app. And just everybody listen to some rain for a little bit, and we're going to splice it in, and we're back. Tom, that was refreshing. My next one is something my next bold prediction, only one pointer, is probably something that has happened, I don't know, 15 times, and yet also never. Huh? How about that? So, Will Howard will set a career high in passing, which he's done many times, but he's never thrown for more than 327 yards, which is his old career high. His current career high is 327. So I'm saying at least 328 yards passing in this one. Interestingly, he threw for, when he set that record, 326, that was against the number 8 Texas Longhorns, who ended up being number 3 in the nation last year. And his 326 against Oregon was against the number 3 team at the time. I'm saying his at least 328 yards this time will come against the number 3 team in the nation currently.
We're now 11 minutes in the show and have agreed on 2 things. So I'm just going to say 334 and we're going to move on.
What? No, 328. He's never done it before. It's a career high. How can you dispute a career high as a
300? Tony, you're going to hurt our podcast rating if you keep being belligerent like this. 334 yards, and we will move on. Tony, and I'm glad that we were able to mutually come to an agreement about Will Howard and the number 34 there, because I've got a fascinating one for you, Tony. Do you know, Tony, in the entire history of Ohio State football, Will Howard has only rushed for 28 yards in a single game. 28 yards, his high as an Ohio State Buckeye on the ground. Tony, that's why I am boldly predicting 34 yards or more on Saturday on the ground for Will Howard. Including sacks, Tony, I will remind you that the Ohio State offensive line is the Ohio State offensive line right now. So 34 yards. Should it be 2 points? Listen, I don't know. That's for the audience to judge.
Tom, do you know how many times Will Howard, no, I'm not going to go into that. Because, he's done it a lot. And believe me, I was looking at rushing stats for Will Howard, and I didn't just go with a simple rushing stat. And I'm going to go ahead and 34 yards rushing for Will Howard. I think that's going to happen because it's kind of playing into my next one, which I know is bold. So I will allow yours to be bold by proxy, and it's like bold adjacent to mine. So at least 34 yards rushing for Will Howard. Now, Tom, what I'm concerned about here is your over-reliance and your over-manipulation of the holy numbers of this show. And I want you to know, if you continue to invoke them, you're going to lose their power. Going to turn into something where it's not a crutch. You can't just lean on it, Tom. And when you throw out 334 yards passing for Will Howard and I can't combat it, you're abusing the show. You're abusing the listeners. You're abusing yourself, Tom. And so the 34 yards rushing for Will Howard, I will allow it because, again, it goes into my next one, which is 2 non-running backs for Ohio State will combine for at least 45 yards rushing.
So Will Howard is going to hit his thing, and then one other player will have a 9-yard run, 11-yard run.
Yep. Or not. Maybe it's 24 yards for Will Howard and 21 for somebody else. Or maybe it's 1 for Will Howard and 46, 44. Math is difficult, Tom, for somebody else. So I don't know how you can dispute that.
This number feels low. This number feels real low.
That's because it's the 34 feels low, Tom.
How about this? We'll go 34 plus 17 and 51. How about that?
Tom, I just said you cannot continue.
Is there a statistical basis for the number 45?
Yeah, Archie Griffin.
Okay, so no then. Okay, so good. So since there's not a statistical basis, we will just adjust it to match some of the previously established criteria on the show. 34 plus 50 plus 17, Tony, equals 51. You should take that with a smile on your face because it's really not. I'm expecting, and we'll get to this later on. Mm-hmm. I'm expecting wide receivers to be involved in the offense in the run game. So I don't.
Tom, let me ask you something.
I don't think that's a particular leap.
That's fine. Let me ask you something. What's the particular importance of 50 yards rushing for Quinshon Judkins?
That you said that was the number. So
no. I said 5 yards per carry was the number. You said 50. So like,
oh, well, he hadn't gotten over 30 in the last couple of games. So therefore I was increasing that by a significant number.
but not the show numbers. You're just random numbers out of a random generator. So I'm just throwing that out there for the people. I'm not saying anything, but all right. So 2 non-running backs will combine for at least 51 yards rushing, which is insane to me. That should be a 3-pointer. All right, Tom, your next one.
I am so excited for Kevin to not listen to the show and wonder why we have an absolutely dead silent car ride all the way to Penn State.
Yeah. On the way there and on the way back.
You guys okay? He knows what he did. Tony, how do you feel about the Ohio State special teams? Do you feel good? Better than good? Better than good? How excellent are the Ohio State special teams on a scale of 1 to 10? 13, 14?
No. Scale of 1 to 10? We're going using the entire one?
Yes.
9.
So you're telling me that if I was to predict Ohio State to have a negative play on special teams, that would be bold. What with them being a 9 of 10? No? Here's what I'm predicting, Tony. I'm predicting the Ohio State special teams to have a very good game in every possible way. Jaden Fielding makes every field goal he attempts with a minimum of 1 field goal. He cannot simply not attempt a field goal. Joe McGuire averages 45 yards more on punts. He's only done that once. And 0 touchbacks, no kickoffs out of bounds, no punt returns allowed longer than 17 yards, or kickoff returns allowed longer than 34 yards. I am predicting the Ohio State special teams to have a good day.
I like this one. I predict a group to do their job. That sounds bold to me.
Well, Tony,
you only want 1 point?
Can I point you to the Ohio State special teams in the year of our Lord 2024, even 2023, Tony, even
so
2022?
No punt returns allowed longer than 17, and you said no kickoff returns allowed longer than 34.
34, yes.
That should, honestly, the entire thing should be no returns allowed longer than 17, but it is what it is. You're asking, this is quite the parlay.
Well, it is quite a parlay, and a kickoff return longer than 17, you can take a kickoff at the goal line, get tackled at the 18-yard line, and it's a very good play by the coverage team, but then would kill this. So that's why I made it a little longer. You can't just get it. Yeah.
I couldn't write all of that down. I feel like I don't need to, but
I have it. Something will go wrong at some point, so it'll be fine, and it won't be. Did I say no touchbacks on Joe McGuire punts?
Yes.
Okay, I did. Okay. Yeah.
And the 45-yard per punt, no touchbacks. The 45-yard per punt seems like the most difficult thing. Can I add in at least 1 punt inside the 20?
Well, we've been so agreeable all show. Why not? Go ahead. Put that in there too.
Because that's at least an achievement rather than just not doing anything bad. So.
Well, I mean, 45 yards a punt is something of an achievement, but that's fine. Yes, go ahead. At least 1 inside the 22. Sure.
Do you know what he's averaging this season?
I think I looked and I went game by game, and he'd only hit 45 once. That was against Nebraska last week, and that was like 45.7 or something.
He's done this 1 week in a row. Like, he's literally not done this. So he's averaging 42.7. So, we'll leave it. It is what it is. Let's see if he can get that one in the 20. Tom, here's one for me that has happened this season. And not just, it just wasn't just last week like yours. I'm saying Kayden McDonald, famously a sophomore defensive tackle, will have at least a half of a tackle for loss. He has 1 on this season, 1 through 7 games, so he's averaging about 0.14 per game. So I'm saying he's going to have at least 3 times his average tackles for loss in this game, which the fact that I'm only going for 1 point when I'm going over like 3 times their average is something that I don't think needs to be disputed, discussed. At least a half a tackle for loss for Kayden McDonald, who only played maybe 10 snaps last week and certainly needs to play more, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's a perfectly viable one. I was going to just say yes before you went into all the math. Way to show off the, your calculator watch. Appreciate it. That's great work by you and the folks at Casio.
Thank you.
Well done all around. Yes, I think that's a perfectly acceptable 1-pointer. Tony, speaking of impact plays, Caleb Downs, I went through game by game, and this felt low, but as far as I could tell, his season high in terms of impact plays is 3, and that was against the Oregon Ducks. So I'm going to predict that Caleb Downs has 4 impact plays this weekend against the Penn State Nittany Lions. And again, this is tackles for loss, sacks, pass breakups, interceptions, forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, as we have traditionally defined impact plays on this show.
Now, here's my question. Because sacks are tackles for loss. So I don't want to be doubling that up.
Yes. Sorry. Yes. So so I guess we won't include sacks because you if you get a sack, you also get a tackle for loss. You're double counting. Okay. So yes.
Now, are we including punt return touchdowns in this one? Because I am not allowing that.
Okay. Well, we'll get to that later, potentially, depending on how you feel about my other 3-pointer. But no, we will technically not count that in this one.
Just defense. All right. So 4 impact plays on defense. I mean, this would be the time to do it for Caleb Downs.
Yes. So this is you've seen things sort of trending that direction, and we've had a couple games where people kind of went, "Oh, look, he was great against Nebraska," but it hasn't necessarily shown up in this way. This would be a week when it would be very helpful for Ohio State if Caleb Downs had that type of game.
My last 1-pointer, and I going back and forth because I feel like it's when you don't have a Jeremiah Smith bold prediction, it's like, I feel like I'm shortchanging myself and everybody. We should be talking about Jeremiah Smith somewhere in here. And so then it becomes, do I go the dirtbag route and say no touchdowns? Because we established a month ago that was a bold prediction, that he won't score. I probably just threw your 5th 1-pointer out there. And then, yes, it is a dirtbag route. I went instead that Jeremiah Smith will have a touchdown between the 17 and 34-yard line.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to give you my 2-pointer right now, and we'll see if we can come to an agreement and then celebrate our agreement with the addition of chocolate to milk. So how about this, Tony? Not only does something happen for the first time in the entire history of college football, like going back, Tony, even to the days of Millard Fillmore, 0 receiving touchdowns for Jeremiah Smith. However, he also scores exactly 1 touchdown on the ground. So we're sort of parlaying one thing that's never happened, one thing that's happened only once, putting them together like chocolate and peanut butter, Tony. But in this case, 2 points.
Again, if you're bringing up Millfill, as I like to call him, you're going back to those days.
Be real careful searching that online. Make sure safe search is on.
I'll cut this down, don't worry. So I like it and I hate it.
The very best kind of bold prediction.
So, and it's unacceptable. It's acceptable. I hate that this is a 2-pointer. This should be a 1-pointer, but you're talking about 2 things that would probably be bold predictions, even though he does have a rushing touchdown this year.
Yes, and one against Michigan State. Yep.
Yeah. So, but no receiving touchdown. Okay. Yeah, I guess we will go ahead and allow that. Interestingly, Tom, if he does catch a touchdown pass, he will become the 3rd Buckeye ever to catch a touchdown pass in 8 straight games in a season, joining Marvin Harrison from last year and Chris Olave from 2021, I believe. So
that is pretty good company.
Nobody's ever done
it. So you're saying it should be worth 3 points then? Is what I'm hearing?
No, and nobody's ever done it 9 times, at least over the course of 1 season. I didn't go and look over the course of 2 seasons. I have not time for that right now. So, okay, your 2-pointer, I will allow it. And we have allowed my 1-pointer of the 17 to 34-yard touchdown.
Yes, non-inclusive.
Okay. Non-inclusive meaning what? Like not including the 17 or 34?
When there was a pause, I was like, I assume he knows what non-inclusive means. Meaning not 17 and not 34.
That's what I thought you were talking about. I was thinking, because it's between the 17 and 34-yard lines. So that includes that. So are you trying to eliminate the 17 and the 34-yard line? Is that what you're trying to do? I'm trying to include
No,
them.
never. I'm just saying between them. So if it was on one of them, it wouldn't be between them because it's
Touchdown.
not greater than or equal to. It's greater than and less than.
Okay, but it's both 17 and 34-yard lines.
Ooh.
Which do you want?
17 to 34 inclusive. Yeah, I'm honestly more worried about him going 70 yards than, yeah, okay.
All right. Your last one-pointer?
All right, my last one-pointer. Boy, I've got a couple here,
Hmm.
and I don't love any of them, but I don't hate any of them enough to truly eliminate them. I'm going to throw out two of them, and you can pick which one you think is a better one for me. One is Caleb Downs has an interception, and one is Penn State has 2 empty red zone possessions. So they get to the 20 or inside, and then fail to score points, whether that's because of turnover on downs, missed field goal, punt. It's a James Franklin game. You never know, they might punt in the red zone. So, I mean, any 2 empty red zone possessions for Penn State.
I'm trying to think what the listeners and the viewers would like here, because if I say 2 empty red zone possessions, it's not going to happen, So I'm trying to think, do I want to make the fans happy and just say Caleb Downs interception and allow you to go with that? And then whether that happens or not, I was taking still, Penn State can still have their 2 empty possessions. But, 2 empty red zone possessions is fairly bold, but I also feel like there might be some need to go for it on 4th down. So there'll be some opportunities for both teams, frankly. But I don't want to upset the listeners, because if we write it down, it's probably not going to happen. So I will say we'll go with the Caleb Downs interception, which I feel like is a better opportunity for you to score here. But also, I think the fans would appreciate me, which they always do. The listeners, the Buckeye fans, would appreciate me not putting that kind of, don't put that evil out there, that sort of thing. So I will allow the Caleb Downs interception, which, as we know, is always, it's allowed, any one player picking an interception. So we'll do that one. Good job. One of my one-pointers that I was thinking about kind of goes into your Will Howard thing, and that was the quarterbacks in this game will outrush every individual running back. Now, I'm not using that one, but it was just an interesting one I was thinking about.
Yeah, that is an interesting one. And yeah, I think that's a real possibility that happens. So I'm glad we're not having that be your one-pointer. Well, I'm sorry. So let me amend that. I'm tentatively glad you're not using that as your one-pointer, pending whatever you're about to say next.
Yeah, and my one-pointers are all done now. We've all agreed on them.
Okay, good.
My first and only and last two-pointer, Penn State has allowed just 26 yards on punt returns this season. They've only allowed 26 yards, I think three total punt returns. I'm saying Ohio State has at least 27 punt return yards in this game, which they've only done once this season, and that was the season opener. So over the last 6 games, they've done almost absolutely nothing in the punt return game. I'm saying they are going to exceed the season total allowed by Penn State to this point. And Tom, I'll remind you, that means they have to force punts.
They do have to force punts, yes, and then they have to field the punts, and then they need to not just fair catch the punts. My only hesitation here is that Ohio State seemed like they might be taking a slightly different approach to punt returns when they put Caleb Downs out there last week, and it might be more than just fair catch the punt and hand the ball to the offense. And part of my hesitation is that I have 2 possible 3-pointers, and one of them is Caleb Downs returning a punt for a touchdown. And the fact is that I see that as a real possibility. Not a great possibility. It's for a 3-pointer, but it's like that's a possibility this week in a way that I haven't predicted them to return a punt for a touchdown in quite a while. And this week it feels like it's a decent possibility. And I think you get 2 opportunities. You return one for 11 and one for 18, and then boom, you've made your 27 with a couple of yards to spare. So this feels like a little bit of an anomaly. What is Ohio State's total punt return yardage this season?
117.
117, and they've done that in 7 games.
And 60 of that came in the first game. So they've had 57 yards total in the last 6. And 11 in the last 3.
So, Tony, instead of 27, there's a number that's just a little bit higher that would make me feel a little bit better about this.
I'll say no, but what I'll do is I'll meet you in the middle. It is the last 4 games, there's been 30 total punt return yards. So I'll go 30 and not a foot more. I'll go 1 foot more.
Technically,
30.1.
Technically, meeting me in the middle will be 30.5. So technically.
Well, we already know 31 is not an acceptable number. So.
All right. I'm going to allow 30 here, but only because next week is a home game. So there's not a cut on the line here. All right. So now my 3-pointer, and I've got 2 possibilities here. And Tony, I'm once again going to let you choose so that it's your fault when one of these things either does or does not happen. One of them is Caleb Downs returns a punt for a touchdown. The other is Penn State's Tyler Warren has a touchdown rushing, a touchdown receiving, and a touchdown passing. 3 touchdowns in 3 different ways for Tyler Warren. Tony, your choice.
Yeah, I like that one. First of all, like the Caleb Downs punt return touchdown, I don't think that's very bold. I mean, he's going to have literally like 60 or 70 yards in returns today on Saturday, so it's not even really a bold in any respect. So we'll go ahead and scrap that one. I just like the novelty of the Tyler Warren thing. And the thing is, it very well could happen. And this is not something you'd ever normally say about a tight end, but we know he does the Wildcat. We know they're holding, at some point you're going to do something. And we even talked about it on one of the shows this week. Are we going to see a jump pass towards the goal line when he is in there at Wildcat? So yeah, I'm going to allow that one. I like it. I was thinking about, like how many points would it be for me to say all of the Ohio State tight ends would outgain Tyler Warren? Is that just a 1-pointer? Is that even a 1-pointer? Is that a 2-pointer?
That would be, yeah, that's pretty, in terms of total yardage.
Yeah.
Boy. That's at least a 2. I think I like that as a 2 better than your 2. So, and I might like that better than your 3, but we'll see. We'll see what your 3 is.
My 3 is a Lathan Ransom pick 6. And I was going to go with a Sonny Styles pick 6. I mean, I feel like Ohio State is playing Penn State. One of us should have a pick 6 in there. I know you already did. Well, you don't. You just have the Caleb Downs INT. I am saying Lathan Ransom's going to take it back for a pick 6. I would like to, we've seen Malcolm Jenkins, Antonio Smith, Malcolm Jenkins, Chris Campbell. We saw Ryan Shazier. I'm sure there are a couple of others in there as well. I assume Malik Hooker, but I can't recall just off the top of my head. I assume he had one against everybody. But, and as we know, Tom, anytime you predict a pick 6 for a 3-pointer, it is automatically allowed, just as yours was last week with Caleb Downs.
Yeah, I would allow this. I would actually prefer, I think, that you do the Ohio State tight ends outgain Tyler Warren for a 3-pointer.
Really?
I think that's, yeah, I think that's actually more bold because that requires, assuming Tyler Warren doesn't get hurt,
yep,
that requires a more sustained, a Lathan Ransom almost had not quite a pick 6. It wouldn't have been a pick 6, but almost had a pick 6 on a interception on a 2-point conversion at Oregon. And that's just something stupid happened and a guy made a poor decision and then boom, you've got it. And
he did have a touchdown
I think
fumble return.
The Ohio State tight ends outgaining Tyler Warren, that's kind of a lottery ticket play in some ways. The Ohio State tight ends outgaining Tyler Warren, that is either they have completely shut down Tyler Warren, which would be a pretty surprising outcome, or the game plan is really strongly involving the tight ends, which would also be something of a surprising outcome given everything else. So if you are putting those 2 things on the table for me to decide, as I so boldly did for you, then I would choose the tight end one.
Here's what I will do. For the people, for the viewers, for the listeners, for the Buckeye fans, I am going to take the one that I had off the table, the pick 6 for Lathan Ransom. That way, perhaps it can still happen for you. So I will say the Ohio State tight ends outgained Tyler Warren in receiving yardage. And I'm just trying to think, is there anybody that can include, that would include like Luke Montgomery if he gets in there in the Bison package, wearing the 41.
Yeah, I will specifically allow you to include Luke Montgomery in that one as well. Yes, that's
All right.
That's fine. And listeners, just know that when Caleb Downs has a punt return for a touchdown and Lathan Ransom has a pick 6, we are going to expect between $17,000 and $34,000 worth of super chats in our YouTube account, youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. We will look forward to receiving those.
That's fair. That is very fair. Tom, you're free. Me?
Tony, there are a few things certain when Ohio State goes to Penn State. The game is going to be close. The game is going to be dramatic. Someone's going to screw up some real basic clock management. I mean, but there is nothing, Tony, more certain than this. Over 3.5 lion roar sound effects during the game.
I appreciate that one. I will. That's a good one. There will certainly feel pretty confident about that one.
You might have already hit that one. They might hit that one by Friday afternoon.
Yes, that might. I'm already leading 1-0. In fact, so all right. Here's my freebie for you. Jeremiah Smith will have at least one target in this game. Only 4 last week. So
you're playing with fire, Scarecrow.
You know it. And if there is only one, we won't be the only people burning down. So that's
there will be plenty of torches if that happens.
All right. I feel like this is started out rough, contentious, angry, hateful, angry, but ends less angry. So I think that's a job well done by everyone as we went through another bold prediction show. If you could hit the thumbs up before we go, if you're watching on YouTube, we'd appreciate that. Whatever podcast platform you're listening to, a rousing rating interview is always appreciated. And please continue to find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Seeing some new members there. Join in, sign up, see us behind the paywall. We will talk to you all about football, X's and O's, recruiting, all kinds of stuff that we're hearing and seeing. So check us out there at BuckeyeHuddle.com. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.